Okay, fine. I'm starting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Let's start. Yeah. Shall I send live or you will do that, Srihash? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. This is Madhu Damodharan from QuestCorp. Uh, we are amazed at the kind of participation in this webinar, and it's a sign of the times, I think, from the perspective that very important questions are being addressed here, and we have the power packed panel for that. Some of the most qualified people to who could answer those questions in the current times with regards to employment laws and HR practices during the time of lockdown and beyond. And I see already about almost 550 plus attendees, and that shows how important the question is. Thanks for the participation. And we have to start. I would like to start with the introduction of the panelists. Quick introduction of myself. I'm a lawyer by profession, but I've been working as a legal or corporate function, and with Quest for almost last 5 years. But before that, I worked for a long time in the industry, staffing industry as well, and I've run compliance as a outsourced support as a business, supporting many clients. So that's my quick background. To introduce other panelists, before I get to the introduction, I'll just give you a quick round of how we are going to manage the time for the next 90 minutes or so. So after the introduction, I would we have got almost 250 plus questions across from all of you who are participating in this webinar, and we are kind of trying to club it to a certain number of topics. So I will try to address them as questions to the panelists, and each one of them while also sharing their personal experience and then knowledge of the situation, how they have handled. We'll also try to address those questions. There will be two such rounds of questions with the panelists, and with that we hope we would have addressed many of these questions, but there are pretty unique questions in the set that we have received so far. And as we speak, you are free to post your questions on the chat, and I have a team with me here who are kind of going through them, and they will, whichever they think is the right one, and they will kind of publish them, and I will take it up and address it to the with the panelists. You can also state which of the panelists you want the questions to be addressed. We will be happy to take it to them. So that's the kind of overall structure of the program for the day. Once again, thank you all for the interest shown. We definitely hope to live up to your expectation. And one more point I would like to do is like to add is that we are kind of collating these questions. So if your question is not specifically addressed, we will have a FAQ built around them and share it with all the participants. So and post that as well. If you have any more questions on that, you can always reach out to us. So with that, I will start with an introduction. I will to begin with, of the panelists, Jayashree is the odd man out from a perspective that she is not the lawyer, all others are lawyers. But we hope that as we were discussing, as we got into this room, one of the lawyers was saying, whatever action that companies are taking, at the end of the day, the compassion with which or the softness with which we take this, how do we explain, is what going to be critical. I think Jayashree comes with that perspective. She is currently the people partner for technology in Google, and she's been in Google for 13 plus years, and she has worked with staffing and business benefits and diversity parts areas of HR in Google. And before that, she was with Vodafone and comes with rich experience. She is a graduate from XLRI XLRA, and as I said, comes with rich experience. She will. We are really looking forward to get her views on this webinar. The next panelist is Mr. Dias. Mr. Michael Dias is a very experienced lawyer, 35 years plus, particularly focusing on labor laws and employment law compliance, or HR compliance as we call it. He is the president of Employers Association Delhi. He has worked and been part of many government organizations. He is currently the member of the Central Board of Trustees, representing employers there of Employees Provident Fund Organization. And he has been on the board of ESIC as well. And he is one of those government turns to for advices, and he is the one on, he was one on the drafting committee of the rules for the code of wages, etc. So sir, looking forward to your views and expertise on this discussion. Mr. Tokekar is currently the Senior Vice President IR and Compliance for Reliance Industries. And he's been there in the group for more than almost a decade now, and comes with rich experience. He has headed HR for WNS Group, WSF Group, and Lakme, etc. And one of those profound experts on IR and compliance, and he has those sharp wits about every situation in with regards to IR and compliance. Sir, looking forward to your experience here as well. Veena is not the least. She is again one more lawyer. She is the partner of employment law in AZB Bangalore, and she advises as part of AZB number of clients on labor law and employment related compliances, POSH, etc. And she also comes with rich experience. She has been with some of the reputed firms like Tri-Legal, Nishit Desai, and the law graduate. And Veena, definitely looking forward to your interactions here. So with that, we are kind of moving to the questions. I would rather start with Mr. Tokekar. Sir, the way it works, as you said, I will address the question to you, and then I will get you to the live screen. Then you can start replying to the question. So basically, I want to ask you from your own personal experience as a practitioner working for a large employer and with a large team to support to multiple businesses to support to. How did you look at this lockdown, and what were your advice to your business partners and your compliance team?
Thank you, Madhu.
Yes,
first and foremost, I want to thank Quess and you and my eminent panelists with me and the august audience. I hope all of you are taking good care of yourself and are home and are in good health. Well, to answer you, Madhu, it has been prima facie very scary, because it is something that none of us have really experienced this before. Not that we have not seen disasters in our lives, but not of this enormity, and especially where entire country is locked up in some sort of struggle. And so to that extent, and the businesses I work for in my group, which is retail and geo, both are pan-India, and therefore we don't have one solution for every workplace, and therefore we had to really understand. And the first thing we decided and have done is we have followed the instructions of the government to the T. So we have not tried to ever do, sometimes as employers, we try to be oversmart and do things that are not written and things like that, and want to continue some of our stuff that we wanted to do. So we have moved a lot of work as work from home wherever it was possible. A large part of our business, especially in the retail, cannot be done from home. So we understand that it cannot be done from home, and therefore all those employees are home. And we try and take good care of those employees who are home, because finally they're going to come back to us. So therefore our emotional connect is not gone. It's only that our meeting them every day is probably not there. Third thing that we have done is obviously some parts of our business, for instance in grocery or for that matter telecom, we are still there and we work every day and our teams are there out in the field. So we make sure that we take care of their safety, we take care of their health, we have put all the precautions in place so that we track every employee who joins the duty in the morning with his temperature. We ask, we keep track of his family and all that. So therefore, currently the only thing that you can do in this situation is to follow the instructions of the government to the T, and not try and speculate what it can be, because it is going to be one day at a time. And I would hate to believe this, but we are in for a long haul, especially in certain parts of our country. In some parts, probably yes, we will normalize sooner than the rest. But so therefore, my our advice to, not really mine, but our collective decision as the company was to make sure that we keep ourselves operational where we have to. We shut the operations where we have no other option but to do that. And third is be compassionate about our direct and indirect employees. Thank you.
Madhu. Srijesh, you need to get me on. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. That was quite helpful. Moving on, I would like to go to Mr. Dias. Sir, my question to you would be, if you, from your experience, and you have multiple number of clients whom you would have reached out to you for your advice to manage this current situation, and from your perspective, how the employers at different levels have reacted? Have they been following the directives? We will definitely get to the legality of it. And what's your experience? Also, if you can add a bit, how the government authorities, like the one you're part of, like the EPFO, ESIC, and the Labour Ministry particularly, how they have been reacting to it, and what's your sense you are getting for probably what they are thinking through for the immediate future with regard?
Well, I have been in regular touch with the Ministry of Labour and Employment. A few days ago, on behalf of the All India Organization of Employers and FICCI, we had a meeting with the Labour Secretary, who did mention that the various labour codes would also be cleared up sooner than later. But overall, let me be honest with you, the government is making efforts to reduce the impact on the employers. A case in point is that your ESI contributions, they have sort of delayed it. So your April, March wages, PF contributions, which you ought to have deposited by the 15th of April, that now is available to you to deposit it by the 15th of May. Similarly for ESI, there would be no prosecution because of the so-called delayed. But overall, the government is trying to reduce the pressure on employers. But you need to understand that the India context, your 90% of the workforce is in the unorganized sector. So with such a large unorganized sector, consequently, the organized sector gets a slightly different dealing with from the government. But I can assure you that the government is making all sincere efforts on their part to reduce the rigor on the employers. And therefore, for instance, we have given them suggestions that, for instance, under the ESI Act, one of the benefits available is the sickness benefit. Why should not the government consider this as a sickness period? Because under the ESI Act, 70% of the last drawn average wage is paid as a sickness benefit to such employees. So that I think would be a great way to mitigate the employer's risk. The good news for those establishments that are covered by ESI and have insured persons covered under the ESI Act, you don't need to worry on the health issue perspective, because as you may be aware, the ESI scheme is comprehensive. It takes care of all contingencies and all situations, and COVID-19 is very much part of the agenda. As a member of the ESI Corporation, I myself have personally interacted with some of the ESI hospitals we have in Delhi and have checked out on their preparedness to deal with COVID-19 patients. So I think that is pretty well under control from the social security perspective. But yes, a lot more could be done. There is another scheme under the ESI Act which was brought in 2009. In 2009, an unemployment scheme was floated because if you recall, in 2009, a large number of establishments were closed down. Now, because of the closure and subsequent unemployment, the government for a period initially was for 1 year, and then they extended it even for 2 years to provide an unemployment allowance for such workers who had lost their job. So I would say it's none of us were expecting this COVID-19 situation. It's thrown up a very big challenge, and this challenge, I believe, will need to be addressed by the employers in tandem with the employees. It has to be, let me make it very clear, this has to be treated as a national emergency. And I mean it. It's a national emergency. I'm saying this most particularly in the context of those establishments that are otherwise supposed to be essential services. And I get a lot of questions from employers that these employees are not reporting for work. How do we address it? Please understand, this is a serious matter. I would believe if an employee or a workman decides to deliberately abstain from work, I see no reason why harsh, tough penalties be imposed on such a delinquent employee. So these are my opening remarks on your question. We'll possibly take things in greater detail.
Thank you very much, sir. That gives us a great insight into the news about the sickness benefit. If it really were to happen, I think that would be a great relief for the employers as well. And moving on next to you, Veena. From your experience, again, you have been advising multiple corporates, some of the big names, and how they have reacted to it. And probably with you, I just want to jump into the real part of it and also kind of lay out the legal framework. Is the Disaster Management Act that prevails over all labor laws? Is the directives of the Ministry of Home Affairs and the one down the line from the state government, is it mandatory on the employers? If you can just touch upon that as a preliminary, this thing will be great. I'll just get you on, right? Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much, Madhu. Thank you, Quest and Allsec, for putting this together. And I guess Simpliance completed 4 years yesterday. So congratulations on that milestone as well. On your question, in terms of is it necessary to comply with the directives, the advisories of the government, I'm just going to take a little step back here to set the context, and you're going to hear the word unexpected, unprecedented, novel situation here over and over again. And it is truly unprecedented in the sense that neither has the government seen anything like this before, nor have employers, and neither have employees. So it's something that we're all grappling together. You will not find judicial precedents on this subject simply because it's never happened before. Now, in terms of what the Disaster Management Act is, it is a legislation which empowers the government to take certain steps to control a disaster. Now, this COVID-19 situation has been declared a national natural calamity, a national disaster, and the government has taken certain steps to reduce the impact on society, on individuals, etc. So now this plays out in a very wide way. So you would have seen the MHA's guidelines that were published on 29th, and before that as well. You would have seen various states picking up from those guidelines and prescribing lists of what are essential services, who can function, who cannot function, who is locked down, what is the exception to people who are to establishments that are locked down, and who needs to function. So these are things that are directives of the government and will need to be adhered to. Now, in terms of whether the Disaster Management Act supersedes the labor laws, well, there is a very overarching provision under the Disaster Management Act, which I would read, and especially in these circumstances, to interpret that it does prevail over employment law. That said, whether the government can actually ask private employers to not terminate employment, and whether the government can force employers to continue paying wages, is something that is sub judice. I have my own personal opinion on this aspect in terms of the constitutional validity of these directives, and that's something that is with the Supreme Court, and it was heard yesterday, as some of you would be aware, and the Supreme Court has given the central government 2 weeks time to figure out its policy on implementation of these directives. So it is one thing to say, okay, is it directory, is it mandatory, or is it advisory? But I'm going to take a leaf from what Mr. Dai said, that this is so unprecedented that it is important for employers and employees to work together in this situation. And what we are really telling our clients is, technically, there are directives from the government asking you to pay wages. Follow that to the T till the time you cannot. If there is a circumstance, or if your business planning requires you to see is showing you a very near foreseeable future where you will not have the resources to pay wages, then speak to your employees, get their ownership into play. And we are seeing this with many of our clients, where even trade unions are agreeing to take a pay cut, where trade unions are volunteering with the management to say, let's work on this together to ensure that jobs are safe and the company continues in a sustainable manner. So it all comes down to handling it in a legally compliant yet mutually acceptable manner. And this is not one, and the India context is again very different, because this is probably the world's largest lockdown, and we can't really take a one size fits all approach and look at a guideline and say, okay, they are saying it's all employers are required to pay wages. And if you look at it from a MSME perspective, it may be possible, it may not be possible, but the legality of it is certainly, it is a directive, and organizations need to comply with it. But what is it that you can do taking your employees on board? Can you come up with interesting solutions, like putting in place long-term incentives where employees agree to a temporary deferment of wages or a temporary pay cut, so in the eventuality they are getting rewarded for this the sacrifice or this cooperation or support that they provide now? Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on, and this is a conversation that we are having like daily, pretty much on an hourly basis with a lot of our clients. The legality is certainly critical here, but it's important to think in a very practical and real manner, because employers can only pay wages till the time they are receiving the money. So we need to look at sustainability as well.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for setting the context again. So I will now move on to Jayashree. As we said, you're not the lawyer, so we really want that the real people perspective to it. First of all, we would like to know from Google being an employer, and probably one of the early alerts would have come to you, Google, you and your team and Google as an employer. How did you kind of prepare for it? How did you prepare your employees and the workforce for it? What were the plans? And so also to add some of these actions that these lawyers are talking about, termination and all that, probably we can later in the part of the discussion come back and discuss with you how to soften that flow. But just give us that perspective from a Google, and also from a perspective, how do we kind of manage these situations, help the employees, at the same time some of these tough decisions that has to be taken.
Thank you so much, Madhu, and thank you Allsec and Quess for doing this webinar. Clearly much needed, going by just the sheer attendance for this event. So to your question, Madhu, yes, Google, we saw this coming because China went through it, much before many of us did, right? So, so there was a little bit of time for the rest of the countries, including India, to do some amount of preparation. I think Veena used the term, novel and unprecedented and stuff like that. So I don't think the preparation started much before that. When we saw what happened in China, we realized that this could well be the situation in the other countries as well. So during that time, we actually spent a lot of time putting together illness response teams in each country, including India. So we got a cross-functional team across to kind of like meet regularly to plan for the imminent situation where this would also hit our respective countries. So India was no different in that sense, and a lot of the work was around identifying the roles that could not be done out of could not be done in a work from home kind of a situation. How do we deal with that? Is there an opportunity to make that doable from home, and those kinds of conversations, and how do we deal with various scenarios? Scenarios could be in the initial days when we talked about we kind of like talked about a lockdown. We talked about that as an eventuality which hopefully we won't have to face at all, right? So we were talking about, okay, can we give Google us the option to work from home, or can we kind of like actually encourage them very strongly, recommend that they should work from home? Those were the kinds of, and how would each of those scenarios play out and stuff like that. So that was much the focus. The move from like a work from home, because we are recommending it, to a lockdown kind of a situation happened very, very swiftly. But it was because of all the preparation that we put in place in the initial period that we were able to actually make that transition, as swiftly as it was required. So that was around, were we anticipating it? How did we plan? How did we prepare, and that kind of stuff. But in terms of what our focus as a company has been, we believe that it's in times like these, it's things like empathy, care, and also inclusive behavior, a culture of inclusion. These are the things that matter the most. So a lot of our the things that we put in place as to address the situation also was derived from that overarching philosophy. And what do I mean by that? Like, as an example, I think one of the things that we realized is that this is a new situation. As a company, given that we are a tech company, working from home is not something that's alien to any of us. We all work from home at various points in time, not for such a protracted period of time, but at various points of time we work from home. However, this is a different situation. It's not just you're working from home, your significant other, your children are probably doing online classes, and then all the support that you typically have to run your household is not available. So you're not only working from home, but you're also doing a lot of work at home. So we were completely cognizant of that, and we said, look, if you're a young parent with a parent with young children at home, and they need your full care, and we recognize that you may not have, the daycare is not accessible, you may need to spend time with your children, take time off. And we started with 2 weeks. We now have 14 weeks of time off for people with young children. They can just take time off, paid leave, no questions asked. Basically, this was an acknowledgement that yes, this is a unique situation and we want to be there to help you. So that was one of the big significant things that we did. But in addition, we said, look, irrespective of whether you have young children or whether you have, this is also something that we provide to people who have family members who need, additional care because they are kind of like higher, at risk, elderly parents, that kind of stuff. But we said, in addition, irrespective of all that, you would need additional flexibility to talk. So talk to your manager, let them know what kind of flexibility you need, and you work with them to figure out, what kind of work hours work for you. We trust you completely, implicitly. So, just go and have those conversations, right? So basically, we actually actively gave paid leave, but we also said, have conversations if you need more flexibility. The other thing that we wanted to we ensured was the tone at the top was consistent with this approach of care and empathy. The other aspect that we also fully recognized is that well-being, anxiety levels are high, emotional well-being, mental well-being takes a big hit in these kinds of times. So we ensured that we had strengthened our resources around mental well-being. We provided online channels for people to talk to experts if they felt anxious, unsure because of all of the uncertainty around them. A lot of people were, of course, working from home. We ensured that they had the right physical resources to work from home, the monitors, they had like the entire work from home toolkit and things like that, right? So those were other areas that we focused on. One of the things that we realized after people started working from home was that, Google has a strong culture of work hard, but also have your moments of fun, right? So that was the other thing that we tried to inject, even when people were working virtually. So how do you kind of like create those moments, create those opportunities for people to connect? I mean, one part of it is getting up, downloads from leadership telling them, why they, how they can support and stuff like that. But how do you ensure you maintain that connection, even though you're not in the same, physically in the same workspace, right? So a lot of our effort and our internal communications effort has been around using things like video conferences, not just to do work, but also unwind a bit, have a little bit of fun. So those are some of the areas that we worked on from an employee point of view. So yeah, that's been our focus from Google's point of view. Thank you. I'm done, Madhu.
Madhu, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Jayashree. It was quite helpful for us. I'm audible, right? Yeah, okay. Quite helpful for us lawyers to kind of also get the other perspective. I think many of the companies did quite a bit. I think realized halfway through some of them may not have been as prepared, and then they kind of adjusted themselves. In fact, at Quess, for example, we are a typical contract staffing company in the large parts of it, and for us to really believe that we can execute it, but to our surprise, within about 10 days of lockdown, we paid 350,000 plus employees' salaries without a glitch. The payroll team was working from home, finance team was working from home, operations team, which is monitoring the payments from the clients so that our associates are paid, they are also working from home, and clients themselves are working from home. All of them together, but still we could orchestrate that, and then we could pay those employees by, in fact, surprising statistics is that we use because of the clients, the entire wage, the time limit for payment of wages up to 10th of the following month. But for the month of March, actually on 31st, we paid 80% of the salary, which is a record by all means. So which shows that there all employers or the organizations are quickly adapted to work from home and kind of adjusted to it, and they were quite agile. Thanks for the perspective. I'll come back to you with far more greater emphasis on empathy and other aspects that we need to take care of. Coming back to Mr. Tokekar again, sir, that yes, Veena clearly said that there could be hanging questions about whether it is the Disaster Management Act is going to be prevalent labor law or not. But all said and done, the reality is that these directions are in place. and also from a situation that we are in as a nation, as a crisis, and employers have to step up, and whatever they could do, they should definitely do. From that perspective, how do you answer questions like, can I reduce wages? Is it right to reduce wages? Is it right to reduce wages of the contractors? And also, if at all, if I had to reduce wages, okay, my financial situation is very bad. Can I at least differentiate the workforce into those who are typically workers as per whatever you call it, Industrial Disputes Act or otherwise? And can I differentiate the action? What would be your answer as a practitioner in a large corporate?
Yeah, first is the simple answer, whether you can reduce the wages at this point of time is no, because that is what is not intended by the notification, at least now. I think we should all believe that the pandemic is not going to be forever, so we don't have to really find permanent solutions for everything that we're facing. Yes, there is a possibility that some of the employers may be almost at the end of their money bag, and they just can't afford to pay anyone. When such a situation comes, probably you don't have to worry about any consequence, because anyway you know that you are going to be going belly up one way or the other. So if you are able to figure out, as Veena was saying, if you are able to figure out some consensus in terms of deferment of wages, or mutually agree, if you have workmen, then you have no other option but to do that, or if you have a union, you'll have to probably do a settlement. But even for the other non-unionized employees, you can always reach a consensus. It will require some amount of communication, persuasion. I personally don't think in current situation where the economy is, where the job market is, a lot of persuasion is really required, because it's something that is not the making of the employer in a way. And therefore, if you propose a temporary wage cut or something like that, you may not really be opposed vehemently or vigorously, unlike what would happen on a normal day. So that is one option you have. You can choose the path of consensus and by some, work out a mutually acceptable solution for some time. And we also have to understand that this is not going to be forever. It is going to be this lockdown, if not today, tomorrow, day after, another 2-3 months, this is going to go. Even if I want to believe that even if Corona doesn't go away in next 3 months, the government and will have to take some decision on how to keep economy going, because you don't want people to die of Corona, but you also don't want people to die of hunger. So in such situation, you will have to, if you at all want to do it, then you should work on the consensus route and reduce wages for time being. Otherwise, if you read the directive as it stands today, you're not expected to cut wages. And see, I must, just one correction. I'm not a lawyer, but just to, if you read the Disaster Management Act, it says that, Section 51, if you obstruct the order of the officer or the officer without a reasonable cause, if you have a reasonable cause, you still probably will succeed in the court at some point of time. But are you, as an employer, willing to take that chance, because it's going to be a criminal prosecution and it has a lot of optics around it? For instance, many companies will not want to be in the realm of contesting a criminal prosecution at this point of time, especially when nobody is going to be on your side, neither government nor courts, and you are in a way stuck. So I would want to believe that this is there for some time, and if you're simply not able to afford at all and it's a question of closing down, then frankly you don't have to worry at all about anything. But otherwise, you should continue and continue whatever you're currently doing for some time, and then look at it as an investment in the relationships with your employees and move back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I always believed you were a lawyer, sir. I'm surprised that you are not a lawyer. The way you kind of argue with me on law, so I thought you're better lawyer than me. Okay, coming back to Veena, just picking up on what Mr. Tokekar said, you obviously don't have any choice but to probably obey this thing. And yeah, of course, there comes a point where you just can't do it. Probably you'll have to do it. But some of the actions that the employer wants to take. For example, particularly coming to the aspects, both the contract labor kind of situation and also you are contracted a service provider. Probably the service provider's employees are not in your premises, but they are in their own. Typical, let's say a call center support or something like that. There also the employee angle is involved because you may have large clients who have subscribed for these services, and based on this subscription and whatever agreement you signed, they have hired a number of employees and hired them. Now you suddenly use force majeure is not something we want to discuss today, but still probably use it as a corporate on such a service provider, and he will not be able to actually comply with the government directives because he's his cash flows, everything is dependent upon it. So have you met such situations, and what will be your advice to the clients?
Unmute.
Sorry. I'm still getting used to muting and unmuting. Yeah, so what I was saying is I'm going to break this down into two aspects. One is in your traditional contract labor situation, where the type that is governed by Indian law. Wherein the employees of the contractor sit at the principal employer's establishment to provide services, in which case under statute itself, the principal employer is liable to a very large extent. So if the contractor does not pay, then the authorities can go after the principal employer. So it's all very statutorily covered, and therefore the same requirements here when we say employers are required to pay their employees, the same rule would apply with respect to contract workers as well. And the Ministry of Home Affairs also came up with a direction which went on to say that employers are required to pay their casual, contract and permanent employees as well. So the guideline is fairly broad on that aspect as well. So from a traditional contract labor perspective, yes, it is mandatory to pay. With respect to contracts, to say your BPO contracts where the call center is, or the manpower supplier, the service provider is heavily dependent on the customer to be able to pay the employee wages. I think as of now, and if you go into super technicality, one could argue that it is entirely driven by contract. If the contract is terminated, or if the force majeure clause is invoked, then the customer need not pay. However, if you go a few layers beneath, and I would assume that a court would probably, in this circumstance, taking into account social welfare and employee welfare into account, that courts could pierce the wheel there and require the customer to make payments, even if that is to a certain extent. Now, this again will need to be examined on a case-by-case basis. And I'm again going to go beyond legality here and say that if the customer is somebody who can pay, it's highly recommended that this be looked at from a long-term perspective. Like Mr. Tokekar said, this is not something that is going to last forever. It is an interim natural disaster. So keep your engagements, keep your relationships with these organizations going. If you cannot pay the full wages or the full service fee, pay a certain portion of it so that the contractor can sustain. I think what is really important is to ensure business sustainability. It is not really about whether I can live without paying April wages, whether I can live without paying May wages. Don't look at it month by month. Take a broader, a more macro perspective here.
Thank you, Veena. So I'll come back to you for more. To continue that discussion further, Mr. Dicer, my question to you will be, yes, we have heard saying that it is mandatory, you can't do reduce and all that. I would go to the next level, okay, from the wages to other possible actions, like can we reduce force during this time? And again, such actions, even reduce, say, for example, layoff, is that permitted? Obviously, the answer is not permitted. Also, the reduction of wages. But if a company employer is in such a situation that probably he has to spread his cash for the next 2-3 months so that he survives, and so that he can, when the business rebounds, he is still alive and at least his head above his water. Is there an option to kind of distinguish the workforce into workers in terms of that we normally lawyers, as we understand, and the other supervisors, managers, and the non-workers, what we call the employee or staff, and accordingly kind of calibrate the actions in such a way? In some of the options could be deferment of wages, probably a reduction of wages like Veena indicated, and which with the incentive for the future, take reduction now, probably when things get better, you have a assured benefit or assured return out of the better days. So I would like your views on that, sir.
Thanks, Madhu. I'll address the problem slightly differently. First and foremost, I would like to draw the attention of all that you have a notification dated 29th March issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs, which makes it mandatory and compulsory for the employer to pay full wages for the month of March. Please understand, two situations are in front of us. First and foremost, wages for the month of April, even as per the wage code of 2019, it clearly states that wages would be payable on the 7th of May. So up till 7th of May, option number 1 would be a directive from the government. And I'm pretty sure and confident that in the next couple of days, some sort of a directive will be issued by the government specifically addressing the issue regarding wages and salaries for the month of April. So that is one scenario that I would look forward to. The second, of course, the matter is pending in court. So in a manner of speaking, the matter is sub judice, even with regard to the constitutionality and the legality of such action of the government. So these are two major imponderables in front of us this evening as we discuss the subject. We have to wait to see what happens in the next couple of days. But having said that, my further advice to you would be, please do not worry yourself about Section 9 capital A of the Industrial Disputes Act, which deals with change in working conditions, reduction in wages, etc. There's a beautiful Hindi saying which says, Miya Bibi Razi, to Kazi kya karega? So if the parties themselves are in agreement, and why I'm saying that is, you can't have one size fits all. See, on one side of the spectrum, I have clients who are in the field of aviation. On the other end, I have people who are engaged in the manufacture of life-saving drugs in the pharmaceutical business. So the two are entirely different and distinct. And what the solution will be will also vary. Therefore, step 1, you need to take your employees, and here I'm not drawing any distinction between worker as defined in Section 2S of the Industrial Disputes Act and an employee. In fact, a lot of people have been trying to interpret the Home Ministry's notification saying that the word used is worker, and therefore we will address this only for the industrial workers and not to others. I will not recommend such a narrow interpretation of it. My recommendation to you would be, even for the wages for the month of April, if the employer were to reach out to the employees, and thereupon you obtain the consent of the employees, workers and employees across the board, and have different levels of loss in wages as a consequence of it, possibly that could give you some sort of a solace in the present circumstances and situation in which you are. And I would like to stop only till for wages for the month of April, because much will depend upon what the government would bring by way of a notification now. My own impression is that the 29th March notification would not carry on further. You will have something else brought into place. I can share with you some discussions that are on is that this period be treated as a layoff, as is defined in section 2 KKK of the Industrial Disputes Act, where under the employer is only required to pay 50% of the last drawn salary. So these are some of the options I can see that would emerge, but it's closer to May 7th that we would have something more firm and more definitive to take matters forward.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll definitely come back to you in the question answer round. Jayashree, now back to you. You have heard what are the possibilities that is being discussed. There is termination, there's reduction of wages, probably some of the concepts that I am hearing. We have not heard in India, at least, furloughs and all of that. I think all of them are going to be on the table, whether during the lockdown or immediately after that, because reality is that all employers are not cash rich. Even some of them cash rich may run out of it probably as this situation goes to a certain bottom and then kind of comes back up. So what will be your advice to compliance as well as HR professionals who may be online here from a perspective? How do we approach this? How important is communication? How it is to be structured? What are the things that can kind of soften the blow of such decisions?
I think some of it has already been covered by the previous speakers, right? In terms, I think the important thing is to be transparent and take employees into confidence. I think that this is a unique situation. Everybody understands and everybody is experiencing this. This is, what also makes it unique is it's not just one cross section of people that are experiencing it. Everybody is experiencing this in, more or less the same way. The magnitude may vary from one set of people to another. So like in Google, for example, one of the things that we are doing is we are reevaluating our project priorities, right? And that is something that we have very, very transparently shared with employees, and that's a reality. People understand that. So I would say this is probably an opportunity to evaluate what is critical and what is something that we can probably do at a later point in time, and line up your resources in that way. From a communication point of view, we are seeing things like a drop in productivity, and we acknowledge that's bound to happen because people are just getting used to a new normal, and but we're also seeing that people are slowly getting used to it and things are slowly falling in place. But I think it's important to be empathetic, acknowledge in small groups, in large, and so we've also done a lot of sensitizing with respect to our managers to kind of let them know that, look, these are all real things that employees will face, and it's important to acknowledge it. It's important to also be empathetic and kind of reach out in terms of how they can help in these kinds of situations. So I think it's transparency is definitely will go a long way in terms of helping take people along in this kind of a situation. And right now we are focusing on the current, and the future would probably be us looking at our investments and evaluating it deeply and seeing what how we need to take this forward.
Thank you, Jayashree. I think as we discussed in the beginning, we have completed the 2 rounds of question. I tried to cover most of the questions, but there are now very specific, some of the questions come up. We had a little bit of a trouble on getting the questions on chat. I think now it's kind of sorted out. Before I get to the questions on the chat, there are a few left which already has come in, and would like to kind of do a quick round with each of you. So to start with you, Veena, there is a question with regard to when you try to manage this wages. So there is a question which says that can we kind of pay it for now or defer it? If we pay it for now, can I do a future adjustment? What are the possibilities of that? Like, is it okay to reduce from the accumulated leave? Is it okay to once the lockdown is over, make them work on a probably 2 week? I give 2 weekly off. That probably I'll make them work 1 more week off. And you have seen some of the government itself allowing under Section 65 of the Factories Act additional working hours. So what are those options available? Can you just quite generally give us some ideas about it?
Sure. So we are working within with restrictions on reducing wages, and again, what I would recommend for employers is to not look at it extremely technically. You'll have to, just because they say you shouldn't be reducing wages, don't start taking away employees' leaves or adopting measures without the consent of the employees, because all of that will eventually backfire. I'm just going to address some of the questions that we are getting asked in a very routine manner. The first one being employers are asking if we can just stop paying employees who don't turn up because we are not an essential service. People are sitting at home. They don't have the ability to work from home. They don't have the infrastructure to work from home. Do we still need to pay them? Yes, you need to pay them. If you can deduct, what is it that you can really reduce? In certain setups, there are allowances that are provided to employees, such as transportation allowances, washing allowance, uniform allowance. So you'll have to evaluate each of these on a case-by-case basis and see if there is something that would not be applicable to those particular months, and then reduce it. Do this ideally with the consent of the employees, with the consent of the trade unions. Evaluate whether that has become a customary benefit and therefore in the within the 4 corners of the term wages. But if these are ad hoc allowances, for example, canteen subsidies, etc., those are things that you can knock off. And I genuinely believe, and this is something that I've seen a lot of my clients seeing as well, where employees are fairly comfortable with ad hoc allowances being knocked off. The second one is in terms of asking employees to set off this lockdown period against their accrued leave. This is something that that I'm not comfortable with. I don't believe it is legal either. It is, and especially when you look at it, even from a consent perspective, I don't think employees are going to consent very easily to their accrued annual leave being knocked off against the lockdown period. We're already on day 34, 35 of the lockdown. And I guess employees get anywhere between 15 to 30 days a year, depending on how generous your employer is and the state law, obviously. So if you're going to be knocking off all the accrued leave, and this is pretty much the beginning of the year for a lot of organizations, your leave balance would have started ticking from either January or from April. And if I'm going to continue for the rest of the year without any leave, then it is going to be crippling. So this is something that that neither employees are comfortable with nor employers. Another detriment for that is employees get encashment of leave at the time of separation. So this directly hits the severance package, and therefore there's a lot of discomfort associated with it. Other interesting options that employers are doing is they are deferring, they're reducing salary and making it as part of a deferred allowance, which is payable, say 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line. And this is, or they're issuing ESOPs, which I believe is a great way to get employee ownership. While this is traditionally limited to very senior managerial employees and the C-suite, they are looking at broadening the number of individuals who will get stock options or stock-linked benefits in the nature of, say, phantom options, where you're not getting shares at the end of it, but you're getting money linked to the value of the company. So there is incentive for me to work better, work with the policies of the organization, work in sync with the ideologies of the organization, so that the company's valuation increases, and that directly translates to my bank account. There are some employers talking about layoff. I guess my co-panelists have already mentioned about layoff being an option under the Industrial Disputes Act, which requires permission of the if you are a factory, mine, or plantation having more than 100 employees, you will need the permission of the authority, except in the case of a natural calamity, and I believe this circumstance would be a natural calamity. The problem with a layoff is that it results in payment of 50% of the wages, and if you tie that in with the MHA guidelines, you are ending up reducing wages. So whatever you do it in sync with your trade unions, in sync with your employees. If you can't, if you are going to see a dead end with respect to the business, and if you are looking at a closure in the near future, then yes, document your business rationale, document your clearly about how your cash flows are so significantly impacted that you have no option but to reduce wages or terminate employees so as to simply sustain. So you'll have to look at it again, reiterating, there is no one size fits all. There are some businesses that will be impacted for very temporarily. There will be some businesses that are impacted for the next couple of months. Some businesses like airlines and systems supporting airlines, for example, call centers that are supporting airlines will be impacted for a fairly long period of time. And this is all something that will need to be kept in mind while strategizing their employee plans. And of course, needless to say, I'm going to once again reiterate what Jayashree said: do whatever you're doing empathetically and communicate so that employees are on board. So build that ownership with your workforce.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's my.
Thank you, Veena. Dicer, I'll come to you as a continuation of that question. The couple of discussions I'm having with my own clients is about, okay, if you plan to reduce, should I protect the social security part of it, the PF ESIC? So even if I reduce only those portion, I continue to pay the same PF ESIC part of it. And is that mandatory, or if there is a consent from the employee, can we kind of look at reducing that as well? And the other aspect, the one more question that I would like to address it to you is the government thinking of giving that extension for PF? Like we have discussed this, the APFO notification to extend the timeline for March payable in April came at the last moment by the time many of the employers have paid. Is there a likelihood, like ESIC is already done, the April payable in May might be extended? And the other aspect of again the social security, how critical it is, for example, to keep the social security going even when you are kind of thinking of taking actions like reducing salaries, etc.
Okay, let me try and respond to your question. First and foremost, if you are not paying a wage or you're not paying a salary, that is, you're just giving an advance to the employee. In that situation, since it's not a wage, your PF ESI contributions per se would not be attracted. So that's the first important thing to keep in mind, that let's say you have an arrangement with the employee, and I'm being very specific, I'm speaking about the month of April 2020. You are not in a position to pay the full normal wage, and I'm assuming that the 29th March notification of the Home Ministry continues. And in that situation, you as an employer are compelled to make a part payment as against a full salary payment. In that situation, you could pay the advance, and the moment you complete paying the balance salary, whatever is the salary, thereupon the PF and ESI contributions could be done. Here I must caution you that for ESI, one should be a little careful, because if the ESI contributions are not regularly deposited with the authorities, after a certain period of time, the name of the insured person would not appear on the ESI rolls, which would be a serious impediment for the insured person. In fact, it is because of this that in normal times, when you suspend an employee from his job, you pay him only 50% as subsistence allowance under the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act. There we contribute to the ESI scheme, but do not contribute to Provident Fund, saying that it was not a wage, the person did not work, and therefore for purposes of Provident Fund, we do not contribute on subsistence allowance, but in the case of ESI, we do it. So this is an area you need to be careful. On the larger issue, my dealings with the Ministry of Labour and Employment give me a very strong feeling that this extension would carry on till about as long as this COVID problem carries on, this lockdown carries on, that people are not able to report for their work in a normal manner. So these issues, I think, would carry on. But what you need to be careful, and this is important, please remember, if you've paid wages, then you are required to deposit Provident Fund contributions. Not doing that would be illegal. It would invite criminal prosecution. Yes, if we are in that moratorium period which the government has given, whether it is the EPFO or the ESI, for that period it is fine, but definitely not beyond that. So therefore, one has to be careful with regard to the social security benefits contributions.
Thank you, sir. Jayashree, I have a very specific question addressed to you. From the attendee, it reads like this. My question is to Ms. Jayashree. Some organizations like TCS has stated that by 2025, a substantial portion of its employees will work from home as a policy. How much do you think it will affect the industrial policy making, taking into consideration both IT and non-IT sector taken together? I was actually saying when even at Quest, we have kind of changed behavior a lot. In fact, one of my team member has written an article also saying, does the Indian law ready for work from home? I typically reacted to it, was don't even get it for my wedding. It's better not get lost into something which need not be covered. But still, I would like to have your views on that.
Yeah, I think even in a company like Google, we currently we have very there is a lot of flexibility allowed, and we leave it to the respective employees to figure out when they want to work from home and things like that. But I do believe that this is going to change a lot of things around the way companies operate, and also from an employee point of view. I think a lot of people have had a taste of working from home, and a lot of people have also been super productive in doing this. So I think this is also an opportunity to be, for companies to be able to tap talent that they have not been able to hire so far, because they will actually, they could probably reach out to a larger talent pool who can be super effective and super productive working from home. So I would look at this as a huge opportunity, and companies should, look at roles that that can be potentially done from home, and have policies proactively around that. I agree with you that hopefully it need not be covered by the law, but it's more around actions that companies can take to learn from this and to kind of like create a new normal that we keep hearing of now, right? I mean, that would really be the new normal. So I think there's a huge opportunity to identify what those kind of roles are. Potentially there could be savings too for organizations lines. So I think there are a lot of upsides to the decisions like that, and I do think there is a huge scope for organizations to look and think on those lines.
Thank you. Thanks, Jayashree. It's really definitely, I think this is kind of a life-changing moment for the entire world as such. So I think a lot of behavioral changes, we will see how we are going to work and all of that. It will be interesting. Tokekar sir, to coming back to you, there is some specific, I'm just kind of collating a few questions together. This is about during the lockdown period, probably a pharma industry, or unlike like you said, you are into groceries and those essentials. And there you are allowed to operate. Of course, there are challenges whether all of them can come to work by their own actions, or you're yourself not able to enable because you're not getting passes. And in that situation, there are two possibilities. One, an employee willing to come, you're not able to do it, or an employee is not willing to come and then he knows in any case you will pay him. So Dysar alluded to it. He clearly said, boss, you can take action in such situations. But what has been your experience about one? But there are industries like pharma and where the government itself said, boss, you can't work to full capacity. They said you can work only up to, let's say you have 100 people, you can get 30 people to your factory so that you keep running the basics going, though even if you're an essential industry. So what happens to the 70? Can they be treated as this thing? Of course, the answer is very obvious, but I would like to have you spell it out and then give that legal this thing also to it.
All right. Very interesting question. First and foremost, we have this problem. We definitely have this problem that there are people. I'm going to answer the second question first. That there are people who know that that they're going to get paid anyway, and therefore they are smart enough to not, not come to work, and probably take the benefit of, getting salary for free, for want of any other verbiage. Now, I would like to only say, and which is what I have been telling our people also, that if you believe that your relationship is long term, okay, he is going to come back, and you still are going to have time to look at what happened during the lockdown, and then you can also shape your relationship with him going forward in terms of how he has reacted to a particular situation. It could be by way of his appraisal, it could be many other means. So therefore, just because somebody is taking an advantage now, you don't have to get into a combative mode right now, because I suppose you are going to be employer for future also. So if you're going to be an employer in future, you have an opportunity to straighten the stuff and the relationship at that point of time, definitely. And I personally believe that this is not going to continue beyond 2-3 months time. And I think in a life of an employee or an employer, 2-3 months is not something that really makes or breaks. That's the first thing. Second thing is what you say is right, that there are now you may have to work on scale down manpower, and that is going to be order of the day for some time to come, where you will be required to work with 25% manpower, 50% manpower, and so on and so forth. Now we are really, in fact, I'm on, an advocacy body of Retailers Association of India. We have written to government that government will have to come with some amount of flexibility in terms of allowing us to use employees for say 15 days and give them off for 15 days. So that means they are sort of self-quarantine for 15 days and then they are at work. So you reduce number of people who are exposed to the work or to the public space, and you also contain half the number of them. So it will probably help, in not only ensuring that the curves remains flattened, but it is something that you will, you will be able to maintain good health of your employees too. The only flip side to this is currently, if you see the current law doesn't really differentiate between a pandemic time and non-pandemic time. So if you look at it, if I want to keep somebody working for 12 hours a day for 15 days, then I will land up in paying every day 8 hours of overtime. So that means I will have to pay double the rate, and on the top of it, I'll have to pay for the rest of the 15 days of holiday. So I will land up in paying something like, 2 months salary, and which is not what the economics currently is going to support me. So therefore, I'm expecting that, rather I'm hoping that government will allow some amount of flexibility. Some states have allowed a longer overtime now, but a longer overtime is only part of the story, because if I have to also pay for the period that somebody is not going to work and pay for longer hours on a proportionate basis. Yes, I must admit that some states have said that you pay on single rate and not on the double rate as is normally done. But still, probably government will have to allow and say, I'm just saying that maybe, 26 into 8, so 208 days, 208 hours of work in a month, whether somebody is, how long one is working, some cap could be there. But some such flexibility will be required if the industry has to come back. Second thing is there will be some jobs, as Jayashree was saying, some jobs will certainly get into work from home mode, and they will probably continue forever, whether whether corona or no corona. And I think that's an opportunity, as she was saying, to figure out talent that otherwise was not available in our standard talent pool. And you probably will also be able to use a gig model in some of those roles. And unless you are very fussy about exclusivity and things like that, but you actually will be able to derive a fairly good economic benefit of a new arrangement that you can evolve in some of the work from home roles. And of course, you'll have to work out a new norm of what behavior you can expect from someone who is going to be working from home. So there are going to be, these are all evolving solutions. I personally don't have a ready-made, idea how it is going to go, because all industries are going to work their own path, I suppose. I mean, Google will do it differently. We will do it differently in our different, in our petroleum factories. We will not do what we do in our stores. And in our telecom companies, we will not do what we do in petroleum. So I suppose we all will have to evolve. I'm only hoping that government will provide some statutory flexibility in allowing employment, because my other experience, and unfortunately so, is what happens is if, for instance, I had this issue that one of the employees, we expect everyone, as one of our routines, we expect everyone to mark his presence, that he is at home, and we have an app that captures lat long, so that actually tells us whether the person is loitering around or is really at home. So that is our way of knowing whether he is, he's really at home. So it is for his safety or security. It is not really for us to know, because there is nothing we can do with him. There was somebody who did not mark his attendance for 8 days. So strategically, I told our payroll guys not to pay him for 8 days. Then I got a notice from Deputy Labour Commissioner in that area. So entire government machinery starts hounding you, not knowing that I have 100,000 employees to whom I have paid, and so then I have to spend a lot of time in going back. And finally, what the authorities will say, if you already paid 99,999, why are you not paying this also? So sometimes some of these cudgel is not worth taking, at this point of time. So I have now decided that I will keep a list of all those people, and probably relook at their relationships once the lockdown is up and we are back to normalcy.
Thank you very much, sir. I fully understand. I think which I also want to address. I think quite a few questions have come on that. What could be the consequence of if I reduce and all of that? The only it's not the labor inspector or enforcement officer. You can still talk to him. Maybe he will understand some of your perspectives because he is in that field. But right now the action lies with even the police locally. So if somebody were to go there and then start initiating action, Veena and Daisar can also support. I mean, can come in later. Is that your ability to go to the higher forums, judicial forums, to get an immediate action? Let's say quash an FIR or at least stay an FIR or an action is quite limited. So you need to be a little aware of that, as not only as the principal employer, as a contractor, whatever that you are. So how will you be able to defend yourself? There are a lot of questions about disciplinary action and which is initiated before the situation. What do we do and all that? I'll first go to Jayashree on that, and then I'll want both Mr. Dias and Veena to kind of step in. So the one kind of situation is work from home. I see my HR continuously bombarding us with what should be our behavior on calls, videos, etc., from posh, non-posh, all perspectives, right? That's one. But also, what if there is some kind of situation where you need to take disciplinary action? Probably it could be on a conference, or probably as an abuse which could have happened over online mediums, whatever that is. And will how does, not from a legal perspective, how does an employer and HR deal with those things? So now it is very difficult to get to the bottom of that, understand and take action and make it kind of look from, we all lawyers look for, okay, create documentation around it, tomorrow you don't get into trouble. So how do we do that? Have you come across any such experience? If not, generally, how will you address it? This is to Jayashree.
So we haven't come across any such situation, but I think we are very clear in terms of how we would like to approach situations relating to things like misconduct. I mean, when in my opening, in response to the first question that you asked, one of the things we talked about was ensuring inclusive behavior, and some of these things that you talk about in terms of abuse and stuff like that is definitely not an example of inclusive behavior. So if that's not in line with our overall approach and overall guideline around how we want to operate during this situation, we definitely want to take action. Of course, you're right, it kind of creates a little bit, it's a little more challenging at this point in time in terms of since we're all kind of working from home and things like that, but we try and make do the best we can in the given situation. And like I said, we've not had any such situation, but I would foresee that things like behavioral issue, I mean, in terms of disrespect and those kinds of things, is definitely something that we will address like we would have in a normal situation, and we would do a full-fledged investigation and take action required, because we do want all our employees to feel safe in every way. One part of it is the virus and stuff like that, but we also want to ensure that the work environment is safe, irrespective of whether we are working physically in the same workspace or whether we are working virtually. And I think this is something we will over time evolve, given that we are in this work from home, going to be in this work from home situation for a long time. But in case something like this comes up, we will definitely come up with the best possible way to approach it, and try to get to the bottom of it in the situation.
Thank you, Jayashree. Coming to you, Veena, on the same question with a bit of a legal twist. Sorry, Jayashree, if I cut you off. The legal aspect of that thank you. Legal aspect of that, Veena, is that, okay, one, that is happening now, but there are many questions around. I have initiated something much before, let's say in January, I put him on a PIP, that is getting over now. Can I conclude that action now? Those kind of situations, how do you think a corporate should approach now?
I think you'll have to look at the MHA guidelines in spirit. So the reason there are these guidelines and the directives and the advisories is so that employers do not terminate on account of the COVID crisis. So if somebody has engaged in an act of misconduct, you've done your disciplinary inquiry and you were anyway planning to terminate that individual, or you've placed somebody on PIP, that PIP has been served to a large extent or has almost been, you've made your well-reasoned decision to terminate employment of that particular individual, then I believe you can certainly go ahead and terminate, but document your rationale, to document clearly why you are terminating employment, why you are taking that disciplinary action. Now, in terms of carrying out the process itself, I've had clients now struggling with conducting disciplinary investigations, conducting posh investigations, online, yes, it is a struggle. There is always a preference. There's always a certain comfort which comes with a face-to-face investigation. But this is a time where we are constrained to do a lot of things, and conducting online meetings and online investigations is something that we have to do to ensure that action is taken in a time-bound manner. And when it comes to POSH specifically, it's really important that time is of essence. And yes, there is a lockdown. Being respectful of that, we should, and the limitations that come with it, I think it's the employer and the ICC's prerogative to conduct the investigation in a meaningful manner. But to answer the first part of your question, I don't believe there is any restriction on termination or say imposing a fine or reducing salary by way of a disciplinary action, which is not related to COVID.
Thank you, Sir, Mr. Dice, sir, the question is next to you. One of some eminent HR personalities are also on the call, and there is one from Mr. Pranesh Ramakrishna, Director HR. He is kind of contesting all our opinion with regard to consent of employees. I'll just read that question to you. I would like you to kind of address that, sir. So basically what he says is, sir, I have a difference of opinion here, please, without any offense intended. Any consent which has the effect of forfeiting the rights of the employees and workmen shall be void of an issue. Also, such consent does not offer a foolproof mechanism to avoid litigations and disputes. Consent is highly subjective nature and can be considered contested in courts of law. So would you like to respond to that, sir, Mr. Dice?
Sure. I think let's get the facts clear. When I use the word consent, I'm clear in my mind that it is voluntary. And because it is voluntary, the other party has signed on the dotted line. It is not COVID-19 that I've been experimenting with this. I've been doing this experiment for the last many years. And I'll give you a very simple example. You sign a settlement with the trade union to give the workers, let us say, 45 days earned leave. 4 years later or 3 years later, when the next settlement is signed, there is nothing that prevents both the parties to agree and say, okay, we'll take only the statutory limit of earned leave, which may be say 20 days. So please understand, I am very clear, very categoric, very specific when I say it is a voluntary consent. Once it is a voluntary consent, even if it is to the prejudice of the employee, I see no difficulty at all, even before a court of law. The only limited point that the employer needs to prove and establish is that what was done was through voluntary consent. If that is in place, even Section 9A, as I mentioned to you earlier, has no role to play. And this we've done for all sorts of things, not restricted and limited to wages, but even to perquisites, benefits, etc. provided to the employee. So please be absolutely rest assured, if the consent is voluntary, it is based on valid consideration, and you have it well documented, I see no difficulty at all.
Thank you very much, sir.
I hope I have clarified the matter for the gentleman concerned. When it is a voluntary consent, that's all I'm saying. Yes, if you've used some sort of a coercion, or you've threatened him or told him, you lose your job if you don't do this or whatever, that is not voluntary consent. But once it is voluntary consent, as I said earlier ago, Mia Bibi Razi, to Kazi kya karega? That's the position.
Thank you, sir. In fact, I just wanted to add, I think you will all agree as well. Yes, generally consent in these kind of situations is looked at with a suspect eye by the courts, but I think the current situation is enormously different. I think courts will also be quite mindful of that when they actually get into considering such a situation. Sir, to Dice sir, again, there is one more question which is coming through the questionnaire while registering, is about what's happening to the 4 courts which is from a labor law reform perspective, all the wage code, IR code, social security code, and then occupational hazard ones. Is there a thought process within the government whether they are going to? There are some talks saying that they might expedite this using a ordinance route. Is there any feeler that you can give us, sir?
Well, I can confirm I was speaking with the Labour Secretary last week, and the Labour Secretary did mention to us that all the codes are more or less ready, but I really do not know how they propose to bring it. I have heard about this ordinance route also, but I pray to God they don't follow the ordinance route, because to my mind, each of the codes need a lot more discussion and debate, and therefore suo moto enforcing the codes, I think, may not be in the best interest of all concerned. So I would believe they need to go through the procedure that is set out in law with regard to these matters. The code on wages has been passed, but yes, the rules have yet to be announced, they have got to be formulated. So all that needs to be done. So I do believe that yes, this government will get all the codes in place, but when, how, etc., I think those are issues that would need more consideration.
Thank you, sir. We are exactly at 5:30. To the people on who are still there, 700. We hit a peak of about 950. There are still about 730 people patiently hearing us. And to them, the questions that are not answered, we are collating that. We will definitely form a FAQ. We will run it past our panelists if they want to add any of their thoughts, and then we'll come back. We will kind of circulate it to all the people who have registered for this webinar. And I'm just taking the liberty with all the 4 panelists. Probably I'll give each one of you about 1 minute to conclude remarks, and then we post that I will conclude this thing. Probably we can start with Veena.
Yeah, very quickly, it is important to be aligned with the law and the government's directives on payment of wages, on non-termination of employment. Look at it holistically, not just from a very technical perspective. There are petitions before the Supreme Court and the matter is sub judice. We will hear more about that. But look at it from a holistic and practical perspective. Like Madhu said earlier, if there is enforcement, it's going to be very difficult for legal representation to respond to those notices. There is police action involved, not to scare anyone, but it just becomes very inconvenient and very, very hassled for organizations, and especially in these troubled times. Work with your employees, and that I believe is the one true hack to surviving through this lockdown from a business perspective. I've seen this with several of my clients who have actually been able to break through and communicate very effectively with their employees, with their trade unions. And we've always had the perception that trade unions will resist, but we are seeing situations where everyone is working together to ensure that business sustains and that the employer does not need to shut the door down. So I think that is my takeaway from everything that is going on and all the questions that are being asked. Do whatever you're doing, keeping while collaborating with your employees.
Thank you, Veena, for answering that and also being part of this. It's been great having you on this webinar. And I think considering the response, I think there could be quite a few follow-ups we can do. I will definitely reach out to you. It's not compulsion that you need to be part of it, but it'll be great to have you next time. So, Jayashree, we can go next with you.
Yeah, I think +1 to everything that. Sorry, can I talk? Yeah, +1 to everything that Veena said. It's really about taking your employees along. We are in this for the long haul. This is not going to go away very in a hurry. Think about how you would like to be treated by your employer and take decisions based on that. And there are a lot of opportunities too, and kind of like this is probably a time to focus on those opportunities as well and see how we can probably create a new normal in the time to come. Thank you so much, Madhu. Really enjoyed being on this panel.
Thank you very much, Jayashree. It's great having you. I would have liked to address more questions to you. I think would have got your perspective because I think all said and done, it has to be with empathy. It has to be with the employee's consent, and otherwise, this particular time being what it is, otherwise we will all fail in our professional as well as being employers or on the leadership with the employees. I'll go next to Mr. Tokekar, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Thank you. All I want to say is that the order under Disaster Management Act that is currently worrying all of us is not a standard Welfare Administration Act. Okay, it is an act that is put in place to decide or possibly help people to live. So if all of us are alive at the end of the curve, then we can figure out who from us are employers and who from us are employees. So I suppose all of us who are raring to do IR in this time and later need to hold our horses for some time, be patient, and we are going to come back, and we will, I'm sure we will normalize this sooner than we imagine. And yes, of course, there are going to be some things which are going to be new normal. So we will have to also imagine those new normal situations and react. I think this also, every adversity gives an opportunity. Let's look at it as also an opportunity to revisit some of our structures, some of our, business objectives. And I'm sure we all will come out with flying colors from this. Thank you. And thank you, Madhu.
Thank you very much, sir. I know how difficult, busy it is for, I manage 3,50,000 this thing on compliance side. You also manage lakhs plus. I know how difficult it is for taking time off and being part of this. That goes to all the panelists. Dice are not last being not the least. So you definitely would like to conclude with your comments. I just wanted to add one more thing. There are a lot of questions about some of the compliance guys on this thing. What is to these law and compliance guys who are in the HR teams advising or being part of these thing? What is it for them as a professional? Is this going to be a lot more opportunities? Is this, or they will also be part of this whole action that employers are considering? Probably you might have some sense of it. While adding your comments, if you can have a few words about that and then conclude, will be great.
Madhu, when I look at the clock, I realized we've crossed our time, but yes, notwithstanding, I entirely endorse and support my panelists, all of them totally correct, totally on dot. With regard to the practitioners about your compliances issues, take it from me, it's going to increase. I say that although they've created the new codes where prima facie, it appears it's simple in terms of compliances, but the ground reality is people in compliance business will continue to flourish more than before. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, I keep telling my team, I have about handling only compliance about 150 people across the country. I keep telling them the digital age is going to kind of, there are two ways. One, they can get wiped out. For example, about let's say about 2005-06, I used to have an army of people sitting in EPFO office just to process the forms. That job description has gone by that when EPFO went completely online. Probably when it comes to the 4 codes situation also, I used to kind of threaten them so that they get encouraged to go and read and all of that. But we are at the cross section of people who know the old and people who can get to know the new. So we are the people who will be in demand is one. But I think this particular situation is going to change a lot of stuff. Probably even the talk about government wanting to expedite the 4 codes and all of that, and the importance for digital in all this is going to be far greater. Probably an IR hearing, if I had said this 2 months back saying that it could happen over a video conference, nobody would have really believed me. I think it looks really possible now. If an employee were to file a complaint, if a labor commissioner wants to conduct a reconciliation, I am looking at conducting those or being part of representing my employer on a video call, which is already happening with the high courts and Supreme Courts. I think definitely that's going to happen. And for the people who put together this, all the panelists, extremely grateful. Please fully appreciate how busy you are in these times and taking time off, sharing your thoughts. Thankful to you and my support team, Srijesh, who did a great job of getting you all online yesterday and getting you trained to get onto this and taking this through without any hassles. Thanks, Srijesh, and my teams, Utya and Sudarshan and Rishabh, who are all supported me. Thanks I'm really looking forward to if I get an opportunity to run something like this in live, you will be the first ones to come back. Thank you. Thanks for all the attendees. 647 are still there. Great to have you. I'll assure you that we'll be back with all the FAQs that will answer all your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.